Hello, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne, and I am so excited to introduce my very first guest on this channel, Dabney Lawless from Lawless Astrology. And if you don't already know her, she's an evolutionary astrologer who trained with the legendary Stephen Forrest, achieving his master level apprenticeship certification. She has a Chiron workshop coming up, which I'm helping to facilitate. So I thought it would be a great time to reconnect about Chiron, especially since she's entered her Chiron return in May. And in this conversation, we're not only going to talk about her own experience with Chiron in the fourth house, but how this syncs up to the United States Chiron in the fourth house and how that transitions into Chiron in Taurus, which begins in June 2026. Then we're going to journey around the wheel, talk about how Chiron themes show up in each house. And I'll be leaving timestamps below, so feel free to skip ahead to any topic that interests you. Check out her Chiron workshop. I'll put a link below. It's on September 20th, right before this new moon eclipse. Welcome, Dabney. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Now, like with all the craziness, we talked about, should we do this right around the eclipse, because eclipses are very potent portals. So it's going to be, I think, a powerful, hopefully powerful and healing workshop for people. So that's the intention.
Yeah, it's a new moon. So, right. New moon on the South Node. So it's like we're leaving the Virgoan themes, but at the same time, starting something new with Virgo. And what does that look like? And we really do have to look at our wounds and figure out what they are and how they're being triggered right now. Because a lot of our wounds, especially you and I, because it's so close to our Chiron return, have resurfaced during this time. And I think it's very important for us all to go into our wounds and really look at them and then utilize that knowledge to move forward and figure out how to use those wounds to help the people, all the things that are going on in the United States to help us all heal, because we're really going through it right now, right?
You're going through it.
Yes.
We're having a moment.
Yes. So I want to understand how you learned about Chiron, probably a long time ago, and you probably felt an immediate connection to Chiron, right? It's right on your IC. It's very important to you. It's on an angle. You have Uranus opposite, and that's a generational aspect, but since it's on your ICMC, it's very important to you. So you must have had a resonance with it right away, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because my teacher, Stephen, doesn't work a ton with Chiron. I mean, he taught it, but it was not a primary focus for him. And it never is in readings that he's done for me over the years. But there was this curiosity about Chiron. And I can honestly say that I fell into the category of many astrologers, which is like, oh, it's the wounded healer. But in the past year, with my Chiron return being triggered, I've come to understand Chiron in a whole new way and appreciate it. It's almost like coming into your own in your Chiron. It's really put in front of you these past pains, these things that may have hurt you, or these things that just, kind of vexed you throughout your life, like a story that you tell yourself. And how Chiron has this amazing ability, almost magically, to transmute that pain, those wounds, those stories, if you put the conscious effort in to see it in a different light and recognize the value of Chiron. So, but it is a journey. And I think it's one that over the past year, I've been dedicating a lot more time to understanding. And that's why I finally feel comfortable leading a workshop on it.
Right. I feel like it's when you teach something is when you really start to embody it. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're going to be a good teacher and you have to kind of dive into the material and learn about it. Right. And so I started reading everything I could and getting different perspectives and recognizing the things that just absolutely stood out to me. And I'm studying with a new teacher right now on some level, and he really was emphasizing the magician aspect of Chiron, which is something I hadn't heard before. And what was interesting is I am in my Chiron return. I do have a YouTube channel as well. And I had just put out this very kind of personal video about this eclipse season. And then I went and I read and I recognized that I'm like right in my Chiron return at the exact degree, like on the time of the eclipse. And I looked at the Sabian symbol for that, and it was like 100% the themes of that video. So there is this just like awakenings that you can get if you are tuned into your Chiron and you're tuned into what the higher healing purpose is of the stories we've told ourselves or pain that we've experienced throughout our life.
Yeah. I noticed that during your first hit in May, that the moon was at 29 degrees of Virgo, which is basically this Virgo eclipse upcoming. And it's very interesting that you scheduled your Chiron workshop the day before, because there is something magical that happens during that return. And I don't know about you, but I had some surprises show up that came out of nowhere, right? And each hit that I had near it, even though it's not like exact science, but at each moment, you have 3 hits sometimes. You have the direct hit, you have the retrograde, and then the third pass. And even on my third pass, I was like gut punched with something. And I was like, oh, but it was exactly the themes, because my Chiron is on an angle too. It's on the descendant. And so it straddles that 6th house, 7th house theme. And I've always really related it to the 7th house because I have always had some wounding around relationships and around my relationships with all kinds of people. And so I always resonated with that part, but I didn't resonate so much with the 6th house. And once I had those experiences and understood my Chiron Sabian symbol too a little bit better, I'm like, oh, this is what I'm learning. And this is what I can lean into, because a lot of the times through our adversities and the difficulties that we have, we want to escape them. We don't want to deal with them. But if we really learn how to lean into them and utilize the gifts that they offer, I think that's when we start to really change the story, like you mentioned in your video and you've been talking about. And I remember looking at your Sabian symbol, and that is the message of that. It's like we create our world. We're an active participant in that creation. So tell me a little bit about that journey and how you came to that realization.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's very long. I mean, I'm in my Chiron return, right? So I'm 51 years old. So that has been a lifetime, I would say. There has been many teachers, many aha moments, many rock bottoms, like, the whole, the whole gamut of my experience. But I will share a little bit about my Chiron in the 4th house in Aries and how that was the initial framing and story that then carried through and has been challenged throughout my lifetime. But I feel like there's been new insights that have given me an opportunity to maybe embody the healing aspect of it now, which, may have been a little bit more long time coming. So, so for people who don't know, Chiron return means when Chiron is in the same place it was when you were born. So, the planets still move in the sky, but your birth chart is static. So when Chiron right now is in the sky, it's in the same place as it was when I was born. And so that means the Chiron in the sky is triggering and activating my own birth Chiron, which, kind of helped inform in a lot of ways who I am fundamentally, because it's in my 4th house of home and family and your experience of your childhood. And Chiron often reflects a wound from childhood or when you're younger. And so mine is in Aries. And the themes for Aries, on the high side, well, actually, it was a pretty low side Aries childhood. And I think a lot of people experience their Chiron in a negative way early on. And so, the lower aspect of Aries can be anger, violence, a lack of autonomy, or feeling helpless, feeling frightened, feeling powerless, feeling directionless. These are all kind of like the negative expression of Aries, where like you're just angry or anger is thrust upon you. And I grew up in a very violent household. There was a lot of psychological, verbal, physical abuse. And I often just felt helpless. And there was a lot of poverty as well, which also money doesn't correlate with Aries, but again, there's like a marker of just feeling like scared and you don't have power.
It's the security of the fourth house. It's
right.
Material security and feeling safe, right?
Right. So there wasn't much of that. And I have a lot of planets natally in Cancer because we always have to look at our whole chart, right? So that helps inform your survival techniques. Survival was really the name of the game, I think, for a lot of people who have Chiron and Aries. And it's funny because Chiron is elliptical, so it doesn't it's not like the same in every year. So like it only spends a couple years in Libra, but can spend 8 years in Aries. So there's a big cohort of us Gen Xers that have this Chiron in Aries. And survival, I think, like, how do I have a right to exist? How do I survive? How do I survive this? Right? Wherever the placement is. And we're going to look at the different houses to kind of maybe give you some sense in your own chart. But as someone with a lot of Cancer and Virgo, I'm really good at like service and paying attention. And so growing up in sort of a narcissistic household, I learned really fast to pick up on clues and be of service and to be the good girl and to kind of, get straight A's and really like you formulate a plan, that Virgo formulation of a plan. But what I internalized, the story I internalized was that if I take care of myself, no one's going to love me. I have to take care of everyone else. So that was the story that for many years informed my relationships and informed my friendships. And because that was the conditioning was that, yes, people can love me, but only if I am giving 100% of myself and I'm not taking care of myself. And so after a while, obviously that's exhausting. I can't keep that up. And that was obviously not what I was put on this earth to do, to only cater to other people. So, and again, this is a long journey and I'm 51 years old, but here we are. And if we're fast forwarding to the bits and pieces I've gotten over the years, I feel like now I am really kind of taking this initiation where I recognize like, oh, I actually have authority. Like people listen to me. Like I think I have a beautiful family and people love me without me just like, like giving of myself like everywhere. But the piece that I don't think I had was this sense of like that I have a right to really authentically be myself. And I have a right to my own opinions and my autonomy and that like I have a right. I have a right to, say what I need to say and I can, be here with everyone and I'm a leader. And so starting this YouTube channel and coinciding with my Chiron return is really interesting because I have people listening to me, which that was also a very Cassandra complex theme of my life was like, I'll tell everyone what's going to happen, but no one pays attention. No one listens to me. And that has been really shifted over the past year where I recognize like, no, I was telling the wrong people. I was telling people who didn't want to hear what I had to say. But if I put it out there, the right people who need to hear what I have to say will find me. And that is the reframing of the story.
Cool. And I know that because you have such a big audience, a lot bigger than mine anyway.
Very relative though. Like, I mean, look at like my son laughs about it. He's like, oh yeah, that's real big, mom. So it's all relative.
To me, it's big. But you've had some experiences with people lashing out at you really on your channel. You have a lot of people that just love you. But the people that lash out at you, that hurts, no matter what, it just hurts. And so I wonder if you can help other people understand your experience with that and how you experience that and how it's kind of informed you maybe about your Chiron wound as well.
So the very first comment I got on anything I ever put out on YouTube was calling me crazy. And so, you know, really fascinating, this evolution. And what I've come to realize so much, and I think this is a very Chiron and Aries thing that people have to recognize, is that no matter what anyone says about you, it's projection.
Yes.
And I've had people who it's a common theme because I grew up in the 80s and I talk like a valley girl, and that's just me, and sometimes I'm not the most articulate, and common theme is to make fun of the way I talk. Well, today I got somebody who was like, how soothing your voice is and how you relax me and calm me. And here's the reality. Both of those things are true for those people.
Yeah.
And who knows if they're true for me. And I think that's the Chiron in Aries thing, is that it doesn't matter. And so I love getting the nice comments and I appreciate every single one. And I try to respond to every single one. And I have to recognize the same way the negative comments are projection, so are the positive comments.
Mm-hmm.
And so one that keeps me grounded, because I recognize, like, I'm not this horrible, crazy person who talks like a valley girl. I'm also not like some, deity that, guru that guides people. I am a middle-aged woman who loves astrology and has, insights. I consider myself intelligent. I consider myself kind. I consider myself high integrity. There's certain things that I consider myself, and that's what I lead with. And the people that need to hear what I have to say, I trust that they're being led to it in some way. And that's how I feel when something pops up in my, I'm motivated to watch something or read something.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's about synchronicity. So I guess that's the healing piece, is to recognize, like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like, It's about me. I need to be in touch with what I need to do and what's going to make me feel good. And that's Chiron and Aries. But we didn't know that when we were younger. That's not something we ever were taught. And it's not about even circumstances changing often with Chiron. It's perception.
Yes. Yes. I never really understood like the saying, whatever somebody else thinks about me is none of my business, until what you just talked about, which is, if you're really seated in your own authenticity and you understand how you think about yourself, how other people perceive you and what you put out into the world is not, you can't control that. That is through their own lens. And it really doesn't have anything to do with you, because at the end of the day, we have our own experiences and we have our own perspectives, and they have nothing to do with other people's perspectives. They have to do with so many different things. And the right people, like you said, will benefit from what you put out there. And I think that's an important takeaway.
Yeah, and with Chiron, it's a cardinal sign. It's angular for me in the 4th house, which is also a cardinal house. So the reality is, like, if I had gotten that first comment that said, okay, crazy lady, or whoa, this lady's crazy, or whatever, and I just said, I packed up my bag and went home, then I would have never had this experience. But I had to learn that. I had to learn to not care. I had to learn to go forth anyway. And that's part of it too, is like, wherever the Chiron is for you, is like embodying it, owning the positive of that, which is in Aries, it's a warrior. So you can come at me and be mean and nasty, but I have to tap into my own inner warrior that just keeps going. Yeah. And so it's not just about my YouTube channel, it's about all of life. And like, we all have these things. Suzanne and I are friends, so we talk about like all the complexity of what's happening in our individual lives and in your individual lives who are watching. That's the thing, is it's all a really rich tapestry, and Chiron's one piece of this puzzle, and the rest of your chart informs that piece. But that piece is a place where you can actually become somewhat magical in turning around places that you've been stuck, right? Like, I mean, stories that I hear over and over again from people when I do readings, like, oh, I've never been, I'm the black sheep of the family. It's a good one. I'm the bad one. Oh, I've never been good at money. So I'm not good with money. I never make any money. No one will love me. Like there's these common themes like, oh, I'm the misfit, I'm the weirdo. Like there's just common themes that you hear. And, because people come to get a reading are already somewhat self-reflective, right? Like the general populace would do well to figure out what their wound or their story is.
For sure.
But, we tend to have where Chiron is, we can wallow in it and define ourselves by that story. And that's the thing that in this workshop, I really want to help people break free from that definition of themselves as this one story and give them an alternative. Now, the work from getting from point A to B is going to be on them, but even just the consciousness of what you're here to do on a very positive level that heals others, subsequently healing yourself, can be really powerful.
Let's talk about the United States for a minute. I don't want to talk too long about it. We are always constantly talking about it, but this is the year of really a lot of changes and tumultuous changes. Now, the United States has been violent for a while, and it's gone through its different stages of violence, but it's been particularly violent in not only in speech, but also physical violence with guns. And it's increased a lot over the last couple of years. And also I wanted to talk about how this relates to the 60s, because we have, during the 60s, we had a Pluto and Uranus conjunction, which kicked off, the civil rights movement and all of what we're fighting for about individual rights. And now we're coming into the trine. And during that conjunction, we had Saturn opposite at 29 degrees of Pisces, which is now coming to retrograde back to 29 of Pisces. So it's almost an opposition. And lately, we've just had a lot of violent events. And I don't want to talk specifically about it, but relating to the 60s and how it connects to now, what are the stories that the United States keeps telling itself that if we really looked at from another perspective, we could really heal and change that story? What do you think, Dabney?
Okay. So I go back actually to the founding in the country. I think about, Chiron being the mythology. It's our mythology, for better or for worse. So, I used to in my 20s have the story about I grew up in an abusive household and there was poverty. Okay. That was the story, right? Okay. Facts, true. Okay. What are the stories that we tell here in the United States? We are a pioneering nation. We are very individual. We have freedom. Those are, our founding fathers, right? So these very intense archetypes, Chiron is in Aries in the 4th house in the United States Sibley chart. So here we have it's a very patriarchal society. The father, Aries, 4th house. It's a society that values freedom and independence above all else. It is written into our Constitution that we have the right to bear arms. Okay, so, guns are part of our nation's founding, our story. So all of this is it's different than Pluto, right? Pluto unearths these really toxic, buried emotions and things that, I think of Chiron much more as mythology. And I think there's a light being shined on the mythology and we're questioning it. And some of us are questioning it. Others of us are doubling down. And I think that's a choice in your Chiron return personally and collectively. And so for me personally, I have really chosen to question my origin story and look and see where it no longer serves me so I can let it go. And I can then have the freedom to share my gifts with other people and be a leader. Okay, that's the same with the United States. Where can we shed this mythology that owning an AK-47 is somehow the Second Amendment, right? Like we have all these like insane mythologies about our founding fathers. Well, our founding fathers were slave owners, some of them. And, like some of the things that we decided we wanted to do back in the 1700s don't make sense anymore. So is that mythology still serving us? And in the places where, and there's a crisis of people feeling really lonely right now, right? Because we're a very innovative society, but this technology has led to isolation. And Aries can be very isolationist. It can be very bare bones, stripped down, like it's me against the world, or I carry the responsibility of the world, right? Like there's different ways that you can look at it, but I think we're being challenged. Like, should we be the ones carrying the responsibility for the world? Should we be the world police? Like, all of these mythologies that informed what we thought about our country are being tested. And I honestly am shocked about the way some people double down on these mythologies because they have a very different cosmology, like worldview than I do. And so I think that's causing a lot of issues amongst people. We're past our Chiron return now, but I think what we saw in the United States Chiron return, and if you go by whole sign, we're still in the thick of it. Do you know what year it was? Like what were some?
It was last year because I had my Chiron return. So it was, I think it went through the latter part of the year before and very much so last year.
Okay. And so, this was the election. This was the decision point in a lot of ways. And the decision point was made that we are going to, go in this direction. Like we're going to double down on some of these mythologies. And, much like Saturn, there's consequences for continuing a mythology without an internal review and reframing that story. So there's once again an increase in violence. There's an increase and I don't even know if there is an increase in violence yet, or if there's a perception of it. But there's this very dark feeling that I think has sweeping the country as we see
political violence more. There's a lot more political violence. I don't think there's been this much political violence since the 60s.
And that's going to have to do with, all sorts of things being triggered in the country, right? Like there's a lot of activity going on in our chart. We just came through the Pluto return. We're going into the Uranian return. There's a lot of things going on, but so that's my feeling about it is like, it's about these mythologies we tell ourselves. And part of that mythology too is that we are this shining example of freedom, and we'll see.
Capitalism, where the American dream, where everybody.
That's the survival piece of Aries, which is like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even if it's not true, or if it's true or not. Like, I have a bootstrap story, but also things went well for me, and I'm a blonde, smart white chick. Like, just. It's not the same for everybody. Life is complicated. And so, but in that complication, we can simplify and we can create a new mythology. We can create new stories. And so maybe people are questioning the old mythologies. Maybe that is just what's happening, and it's a process to
Well, who does the United States belong to? That's the foundation. What is the United States and who does it belong to? There's a lot of people right now that are basically wanting to go back to some mythology of the United States belonging to white males. And that's the only people that matter in the United States. So it's very interesting, hard, difficult, challenging, especially since the mythology is so different for everybody. What is our identity, and how do we move forward with a shared identity rather than moving forward with this conflict that we're having right now? So I wanted to understand sort of this movement. We're going to have Chiron moving out of Aries next year, and it's going to be going into Taurus. And the last time we had Chiron in Taurus, Jimmy Carter was president. And I wonder what you have to say about Chiron going into Taurus and what you think we're going to maybe experience, what themes we're going to experience as we transition into Taurus next year.
Okay. Well, energy crisis, right? Like Carter's administration was known for energy crisis. Like that's what happened. So Taurus has to do with the earth. Taurus is Mother Nature. Taurus is our resources. Taurus is food. Taurus is it is like how we heat our homes, how we power our computers, right? It's those resources, those natural resources. So what we're going to see is a reckoning with the natural resources being stripped through things like AI. We've already seen people's electric bills going sky high. I think there's going to be an identity crisis around we're doubling down on coal, but yet we're cutting back on ethanol, but like the corn farmers are struggling because of tariffs, and like they've got too many crops in the field, and they've changed environmental policies. So climate change is going to be huge. We're going to see accelerating consequences of climate change, but we're also going to be seeing like people again, the mythology during Taurus, like that's when Earth Day was also created, right? Like, I'm not sure exactly the date, but like in the 70s, there was this sort of back to Earth movement. So there is sort of a mythology of some people in this country about how we are environmental stewards.
Yeah.
And then other people have the mythology that it's all a hoax. And so where the truth lies depends on who you are and what your mythology is. But the truth of the matter is, like, Taurus has a very, very powerful relationship with the earth. And I think that's what we're going to be grappling with.
It's also about our values, right? It's about values. So what, and this traditional idea.
And money, finances.
Yeah, finances. And it's very interesting that Uranus is coming back into Taurus, but will leave. I don't know when the timing of when it goes into Gemini for
not till like summer or something. It's kind of torturous.
But it's interesting, this transition of Chiron going into Taurus as Uranus is going into Gemini. So we've had this transition, this chaos of Taurus. I think that we're now going to have a big reckoning, like you said, finances, as well as what are our values and our traditional values and how we're going to move forward. It'll be really interesting to see that transition.
But like at a personal level, if you're entering your Chiron return, you have Taurus, look to where your values have shifted, where you may have been raised very conservative Christian and you're questioning things, or you may have been raised by hippies on a commune and now you are questioning things. So there is this sort of what are my values? What do I believe in? What's most important to me is what Taurus is being asked. So there was I don't feel safe when you were younger in some way, like something was taken from you, or, you were robbed of some experience to make you, so you could feel that, security financially or with your values. Like you may have felt like you couldn't speak up. You just had to kind of go with the flow in order not to rock the boat. There is a little bit of like, I don't want to rock the boat. So there may have been, you could have had parents that were quite stubborn and they just had a very dogmatic viewpoint that, you're now questioning if that story still fits for you. So I think Chiron and Taurus, it is just another piece of this puzzle, but I wouldn't say Chiron and Aries has been that peachy either. So
no, and
it's been a little bit of a selfish time too, so that would make sense.
Yeah, I can't remember when Chiron first entered Aries. Do you remember?
No, I got no idea.
I got to look that up.
I wasn't doing my channel when it did, and like I'm, basically like. Give me 3 years ago, I wasn't paying attention to things hardly at all the way I am now.
I know. So you said it was like 7 years, maybe that Chiron goes through cycle. 70 years, 8 years. I'm going to have to look back at that. But yeah, it hasn't been an easy 7 to 8 years for sure.
It may have been like 2016, I want to say.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
And
Because I'm
that's a
seeing a lot of,
very, that is so interesting that like a lot of people, I think we talk about, I know you've talked about on your channel and I've talked a little bit about it, like the touching the stove. Like there's so many people in our country who like they can't wrap their head around it unless it affects them. And that's very Chiron and Aries too. It's like, well, I don't see it unless it affects me. And so having that Chiron and Aries right now, like that was like saying like, hey, it's going to affect you. But like, can you see that? Like, or do you just care about yourself? Right. Like, so, and anyway, if you have Chiron and Aries and you're watching this, chances are you weren't of that ilk, but there are a lot of people out there that, like I said, you can ignore the mythology or double down on it. And not all mythologies are, woe is me, I'm so, like no one loves me. Some of them are, I'm the greatest thing ever and I can do no wrong and I deserve the world, right? Like that needs to be shifted too. So.
Exactly. So yeah, let's start with the first house. You want to talk about Chiron through the first house and what that might mean for people?
Yeah. And so this is just like a little sample of like what you get in the workshop, because we're going to really like blow this out a lot more. We're going to talk about the wound and the healing journey. But if your Chiron's in the first house, it has a lot to do with your relationship with other people and like how you assert yourself. And and are you somebody that defers to other people because you are afraid to assert yourself? Is that your Chiron journey, or is your Chiron journey that you are kind of a little too demonstrative and you can't take other people's perspectives into account? So the first house really is how we assert ourselves out in the world, how we take action, and how we get, it's about us. It's all about us. The second house is more about what we value, but it's also about our feeling safe and feeling secure, and the sacrifices that we make and the places we underestimate ourselves, where we're willing to compromise ourselves and compromise our beliefs or our integrity for the sake of safety or getting along. Like that's very second house. And so the story you could be telling yourself is like, I'm never going to be wealthy, or, finances, anything that makes you feel so, or I'm not very powerful, like where you have just not felt empowered to be you're authentic to yourself. Chiron is always about, to some degree, your authenticity to yourself. And in the second house, it's like you've kind of foregone that for a feeling of getting along or being safe, or, where you've been afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
And do you have anything to add about any of these? Or
I think it's also about, the second house is also about our intimate relationship with our body. Because the first house starts with the body and ourself. The second house goes into more about our intimate relationship with our body and exploring that and how we feel safe within our own intimate connection with ourselves.
Yeah, there's a real lack of power, like feeling like whether it's conscious or unconscious. In the second house, it's feeling powerless. The third house is how we communicate. So when you have Chiron here, a lot of times, like you don't know your voice. You're afraid of your voice, or you use your voice in a way that is harmful to other people. So it's about bringing more consciousness to your voice, because you have a gift to give. You have something very healing and powerful to say, but you may need to examine your belief system around how you communicate.
And your siblings too. There might be some.
I'm an only child, so I forget that part. See, that Chiron and Aries narcissism pops up for me too. Yeah, siblings are huge. That's when I do readings. A lot of times when people have Chiron in the third house, there's issues with the siblings that, carry on into their adulthood by, and sometimes you see that during the Chiron return, there's just like this break where they realize like, I just don't need this in my life anymore. Like, yeah.
And learning, the third house is about learning, but it's different than the ninth house. It's more about how we process information. And our elementary school might have had problems in your early childhood with learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there could be wounds around the neighborhood, even like you had like a creepy next door neighbor or something like that.
Sure.
So we talked about the fourth house. It's how home and family. And so it's really becomes fundamental to your beliefs about the world around you from childhood. And in the fifth house, it's about self-expression and how you may not be in touch with your own needs when it comes to sexuality or play or creativity. You again like may underestimate how creative you are with Chiron in the fifth house, because people think of creativity as like Picasso's and Van Gogh's, but creativity comes in all different forms. And so if a much more healing expression is learning to dance, learning to play, having romantic dinners and what is your own personal self-expression. Sixth house is the house of day-to-day. Sixth house is always so boring, right? That we don't really live it, but it's the house that like we live with every single day of our lives, right? I'm not creative every single day of my life, but every day I get up and brush my teeth and I make dinner and I do the dishes and like feed the cat. And so the sixth house has to do with that. The sixth house is like, what is our work in the world, our day-to-day mission? And it's also our health. And so like I have a friend who Chiron in the sixth house, she is a bit of a hypochondriac because the only time she really felt heard or listened to or loved was when she was sick, when she was a child. And so, that mythology of like, so she's always got a new ailment she's talking about. And, you may know someone like that, right? Where it's like, or my work is never done. Like that's a very Chiron in the sixth house. Like, oh, there's just so much to do that like the work is never done. So reframing that.
Yeah.
That's your job at this point is like, how can you change that mythology? Because, maybe that sacred service is what you're here to do. Maybe, it's not about not wanting to do the daily drudge, but like it's about volunteering at an animal shelter or something.
Yeah, I have that, like I said, in the sixth house. And I found during my Chiron return, it was a lot about perfectionism. And that has to do with work is never done because it's never good enough. And so I remember my last hit of my Chiron, I had a dear friend send me an email about my ums and my YouTube videos. And like I had specifically put out a YouTube video and I've been practicing this to not, just put it out and not to put so much pressure on myself because I put a lot of pressure on myself about perfectionism. And so I got that email and at first I brushed it aside. But then it really got to me after that. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I knew I needed to confront it, and I did later, but it drove this whole perfectionism part of me, just like overdrive. And so I spent all this time actually editing out all my ums and getting software and editing it out. And I actually discovered that I really like this editing, the Adobe editing software that I got. But I recognized this perfectionism, and then I put out a new video, and it didn't make a difference.
I got so much bad advice when I first, like everyone was like, make your videos 5 minutes long, make your videos no more than 4 minutes. And I was like, and then when I did a few of those, no one watched them, including the people that told me to make them 4 or 5 minutes. Right. And I was like, I'm just going to do what's right for me. And that flowed a lot better. But yes, the unsolicited advice of the sixth house is that
what it is? I didn't know that was unsolicited advice.
I think the unsolicited advice is that perfectionism, right? So people are going to give you opportunities to spin out and want to be better. And so it's like a test. And
interesting.
I've had plenty of them, trust me.
Yeah, because I've had, and it's at work, I worked in a startup environment, and it's always like you're never good enough, and there's a lot of gaslighting, and no matter how hard you work, it's never enough. And so I really had to stop that a lot.
Right,
And
but the Aries, because we know yours is an Aries, right? The
yeah,
Aries is about, oh, I'm just gonna work for myself. I need to do this my way. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to put this effort in. I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna, make it as perfect as I need it to be. Like, this is about my service and my unique way that I want to bring it out into the world. And that's where the sign comes into play, because
yeah,
then that becomes your healing. You can't be like other people when you've got Chiron and Aries. You have to be like you.
yeah,
And
for sure.
so that's the unsolicited advice too, which it's like others coming to tell you how you can make something, you can improve, you can be better. And it's never going to work for you. And yeah, so I'm glad that you are leaving your ums in, because I have a million likes and ums and
Yeah, I mean, even the best speaker, when they're live, it's just like
also,
you
like,
can't.
not that many people watch our channel. Like, we can think, you know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Who
Reality
cares? Yeah,
is, like, the people that will be led to this are the people that need to see it. And
right.
that's it. Like, we are not trying to be famous. We are not trying to be gurus. We are not trying to do anything other than just be ourselves and provide a service to the world, which is our astrology teachings. And people can take it or they can leave it. Ums, likes, and knows included. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, seventh house.
The seventh house has to do with our relationships. So this one is a wounding around one-on-one partnerships and friendships and underestimating yourself or potentially not seeing another person clearly. So this is, again, like going back to, your formative childhood experience of your parents. What are the methodologies about relationships? That's what you need to test. And that's where you have a healing quality to offer. Eighth house takes, do you want to weigh in on the seventh house more than that?
No,
Or
I think that's perfect.
it's a
Yeah, yeah,
straightforward
it's pretty
house.
straightforward. It's easier to
Yeah.
understand. The sixth house was always hard for me to understand, just the sixth house in general. They always talk about the health and slavery and work and stuff, but I think it's a lot more nuanced, and you just covered a lot of it, so it's good.
Okay, awesome. Eighth house. Now we go to like a more nuanced one again. And the eighth house one is a tough one. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this one, because eighth house is where we hold trauma in our unconscious. And so the eighth house is, it's traditionally sex, death, and taxes, right? So it's money, it's financial power. So finances come into play here, but sexuality. So it's a very complicated house. However, the bigger overarching theme is buried fears. Like, it's something very deep in you that is buried and frightened. And there is a story that we have compensated and told ourselves that may not be true about XYZ fear.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity then to really do kind of your Plutonian work to unearth those fears, bring them to the surface, shine a light on them, take away its power, and then you have this really amazing capacity to be a healer to other people. So it's not an easy one. It's not an easy journey, but eighth house Chiron is really worth the work. Ninth house is oftentimes I see ninth house Chiron is people that were raised with a specific dogma. There's, this is how we are. And it doesn't have to be evangelical Christian or Hasidic Jew. I mean, it can be like, we're the charitable family that always does everything for everyone, and we're the perfect family. And we don't care what, we're like, you have this sort of shining, like, keep up with the Joneses sort of facade that is, embedded in you early on, where it's like, this is how it's done. And like, you kind of just like are indoctrinated in some way. So there is an indoctrination that whether it's religious, spiritual, family of origin, political doctrination, we're seeing a lot of that, where it really is not authentic to you. It may hurt you in some way. It's hurting your soul. And there's a story that you've told yourself about it that you believe. And yeah, there's a great channel with this woman who grew up in a Mormon household. And she has gone off to do some really awesome. I'll send you her thing so you can link to her channel, because she finally broke away from her husband, who was Mormon and was cheating on her. She had 3 kids. She had given up her job. She ended up living in her car and was homeless. He took the kids away from her. I mean, she subsequently got them back, but just the whole thing, and her whole life was predicated on the teachings from her childhood of Mormonism. When she began to question them, how much her life fell apart, but then how she really found herself and what she really truly believed in. So,
does she have Chiron in the 9th house, or you don't know?
I don't know. I actually,
really
she's on my list of people to reach out to, because I love her channel. Because I love her channel, and I've got some real feminist energy in me too. She's become this real feminist spokesperson, and she's my age. She's born our same year as us. So she's definitely Chiron in Aries. I know that. And she's blonde, and she looks the whole conservative Mormon, she hasn't given up her look. Right.
Yeah.
And she's just authentically telling it like it is, and what her experience was, and how she couldn't see things clearly until, a few years ago. So,
well, if she comes on your channel, I would love to hear it. We would love to get an update on whether she had Chiron.
I mean, I don't know if she will or not. I'm going to invite her. She's not an astrologer, by the way. She's just this badass that got away from, that dogma.
It's really hard when you have that dogma, because, in those types of religions, you give up so much because it's everybody that it's very connected and very tight, that community. And so if you give that up, you don't just give up your family of origin, you give up your whole life and all of the people in it, basically.
Yeah. That's 100% true. It takes a lot of courage. So again, Aries.
Yeah.
10th house is how we're seen out in the world. So the 10th house is the house of career. But I tend to look at this again as, what are the stories that we learned early on as survival techniques because we were hurt in some way, or we're frightened, or that we have to turn it around. So that could even be I always thought I should be a doctor. I was always told that I'm going to take over the family business. Or, there's just some kind of family link or something about what you're supposed to be when you grow up. That's really it is. What are you supposed to be when you grow up? Who am I? And so this is we don't, it's funny, if you go to Dallas, anybody from Dallas watching, feel free to comment, but at least Dallas in the 90s, because I lived in Austin in the 90s. And it was so funny when I went there. I went to my husband's parents' church, and these women had these giant hairdos and like diamonds and stuff like that, and I'd never seen anything quite like that. And to me, that's a little Chiron in the 10th house. It's this is the statement I'm making about who I am out in the world and my role. It's
role.
Right, it's your role. And so, how many of those women maybe would just like to just do this? I don't know. Maybe none of them. I don't know. But that to me is Chiron in the 10th house. So yes, it's your career, but it's sort of the what am I supposed to be when I grow up? Oh, I'm supposed to be the lady with the big hair and stay-at-home mom, or I'm supposed to be, and questioning that and
And it's the axis, the axis, the 4th, 10th house, I'm looking at things from the axis point of view now, because I feel like you can't have one without the other. So it might be an injury that you had with a parent, a father or a mother. It depends on who represents the 4th or 10th house for you. A wounding around your one of your parents.
100%. Yep, that's a great point. And and it doesn't have to be the father. In a lot of places, it's traditionally the father, but I agree with you. The 4th house could be the father, and the 10th the mother. They play interchanging roles for sure. So there is a family of origin wound about what you're supposed to do when you grow up.
Yes.
The 11th house has to do with your friendships and your community. And I have seen people with Chiron in the 11th house have some really deep wounds around the way they were treated by friends, like whether they were bullied or they felt like they were the outsider. Like, let's say they had Chiron in Aquarius in the 11th. Like, they may have had no friends growing up. Like, they may have been the serious weirdo that like everyone avoided. So there is something about just your friendships, but then you get to this Chiron return where you have just this opportunity to recognize how much you are called to be the person who helps your friends. And you have this just very pivotal role in other people's lives, and you're kind of a leader in some ways and a healer. But it has to be with these like truly authentic friendships. And so the ones that are not authentic fall away.
Yeah. And it's also the house of dreams and wishes.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah. So, whatever your dreams and wishes were, you didn't feel like you could ever go after your dreams and wishes. Maybe there were some expectations that right away you just didn't align with your dreams and wishes, and you just never saw yourself being able to fulfill those.
Beautiful. I don't think I've ever heard that one. So that's cool. And then the 12th house is the other complicated house. So, Chiron in the 12th. I was always taught that anything in the 12th house is somewhat hidden from us and it's hard to access. And so a lot of work is being done in your unconscious and in your dream world with Chiron in the 12th. Chiron in the 12th can project a lot of doom and gloom and victimhood. That story, that you tell yourself may feel like you're at the bottom of a mountain and you could never climb to the top. However, it is a very healing placement where you have this immense responsibility as well as opportunity to provide healing for your own unconscious wounds and those of others. So it's a hard one to understand, but it has to do with prayer and meditation and trust and nature and faith.
It's also around mental health, psychological health. The sixth house is really more to do with the physical health, and the 12th house is more to do with the mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. So that may have played a big role in your family of origin, that there may have been mental health struggles, or there may have been you yourself may have struggled with depression or some other mental health issues that have sort of dogged you. And like, how do you turn that around to recognize like what a gift it is to other people potentially?
Yeah.
Those are the 12 houses. So that gives you just a little flavor of what we're going to be talking about and how to get to those healing places. So
yes, that was great, Dabney. Thank you so much. And I looked over Dabney's presentation. It's wonderful. And I think it's really helpful. She not only talks about the wounds, but the things that we can set up for ourselves to turn that story around, right? And so I'm really looking forward to that workshop. Again, it's on September the 20th, and I will be linking to it below. So I hope you join us for that workshop. And if not, just leave a comment below. We'd love to hear about your own Chiron if you've already done that journey. It's always helpful to learn about other people's experiences with their Chiron. So thanks, Dabney, for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Suzanne.